The American justice system has always been the pride of our nation and the envy of the world. In America, justice is portrayed as blindfolded because it doesn't matter whether those who seek it are rich or poor, weak or powerful, Republican or Democrat. Equal justice under law means exactly that. Everyone is treated the same. It is this central principle that gives the law its moral authority. Without it, law simply becomes raw force, devoid of legitimacy. Respect for the law breaks down, and without that respect, civilization gives way to the law of the jungle. This is the well-trodden path to tyranny taken by many nations throughout history. We Americans have always believed that it can't happen here. And yet, it has happened here, and we're watching it in real time. The turning of the law against our democracy began with the IRS harassment and intimidation of the Tea Party movement during the Obama administration. One of the principal players was the same Jack Smith that the Biden administration tasked to pursue federal charges against Mr. Biden's political opponent. During the 2016 election, corrupt officials at the FBI used the terrifying powers they were entrusted to advance a monstrous lie concocted by the Democrats that Donald Trump was conspiring with the Russians. Democratic political activists within the government used that lie to spy on Mr. Trump's campaign, terrify his supporters, and interfere with the election. When that failed, they used it to undermine and obstruct the lawfully elected president. But nothing comes close to the demons the Democrats have now unleashed. They have broken every political norm, civil tradition, and due process protection that have shielded Americans from the convulsions of banana republics. We can now clearly see the full power of leftist lawfare. Politically corrupt prosecutors, ethically compromised judges, and a partisan and biased jury pool can concoct specious cases and turn them against their political opponents under circumstances that make the show trials of Russia look like models of enlightened jurisprudence. The genesis of these cases is damning. All were brought when Donald Trump dared to run again for the presidency. Two were brought by leftist prosecutors who campaigned on targeting Donald Trump. Biden's number 3 official in the Justice Department left to spearhead the New York prosecution. The Atlanta prosecutor strategized for hours with the White House counsel in advance of filing that case. Biden's Attorney General dispatched Jack Smith with a long history of prosecutorial abuses to apply a glaring double standard to prosecute a former president over a civil dispute involving the handling of records. Legal experts from left to right have excoriated the double standards and violations of due process and have condemned the appalling judicial misconduct of the judge. Now, the Democrats believe this is their path to electoral success, abusing our laws to declare their opponent a convicted felon. Well, in the history of kangaroo courts and despotic regimes, I'd say Mr. Trump has pretty good company. Nelson Mandela, a convicted felon. Nathan Sharansky, a convicted felon. Sir Thomas More, a convicted felon. Under George III's 1775 proclamation, every one of the American founders would have been convicted felons. By traducing the American traditions of political tolerance, respect for democracy, equal protection of the laws, and simple fair play, the left is destroying the legitimacy of our legal institutions and the respect they once commanded in a concerted campaign to subvert democracy itself. I still believe our American judicial system will ultimately prove itself resilient, and this glaring miscarriage of justice will eventually be overturned. But the damage that this has already done to the rule of law and the sanctity of our elections is immense. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto supposedly said that he was afraid that all they had done was to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. I believe the Democrats who are celebrating this travesty are about to discover the same thing. The American people are known throughout history for their common sense, their innate fairness, and their devotion to the institutions that have maintained their freedom through 12 generations. The brazenness of the abuses by this administration and its confederates is obvious to any who care to look, and an awareness is building that democracy is indeed at stake in this election.